Good morning, my loves. So I want to take a minute to talk to you guys about numerology. Numerology is a divination practice, which means that numeric frequencies and sequences should align with emotions, should align with experiences. Okay, so I want to talk to you guys about two very particular sequences today, and that is 202 or 202 and 404. This is going to be a situation that occurs between two beings, right? We have a mirroring of energy, okay? Or a reflection in between two people's representation of this single energy. Okay, so for 202, for example, I have two worldviews being reflected upon, being mirrored possibly. And then when we get to 404, we are talking about awareness levels being mirrored, or awareness levels being reflected upon or judged between two beings. Let me give you an example here. Let's say you are watching a YouTube interview between two people. One person clearly has higher consciousness than the other. But more than that, let's say this person has a consciousness that is very similar to your own, right? You start noticing that certain words they use, the way they perceive the mind, terms that they use to navigate their own self-mastery, literally are a reflection of your own. We're talking about 202 in a reflective manner. Okay? When we get into 404, however, let's say the person that is interviewing the person that you have a lot in common with mentally. Let's say they clearly just are not on the same page. They're open, they're receptive, they're learning from this being. But they're clearly not on the same wavelength, consciousness-wise, frequency-wise, which is fine. But you start picking up on this being that's being interviewed kind of saying things to this other person, indicating like, you have some things to learn, and I'm on a higher plane, so to speak, than you are. That is an example of 404 energy, right? We have perspective and awareness level being judged between two beings. Does that make sense? So the former example of 202 that I discussed with you, two sides of the same coin, if in fact there's similarities. Because when we have a worldview being reflected and we have an awareness level being reflected, right? That is one example of 202 working with 404 in a situation. I just described to you a different example of where maybe I'm relating to what I'm watching, one of the people, right? So that's 202 for me. But then me and this person being interviewed are both looking at the interviewer in a 404 energy, like judging the lower consciousness. Not in a negative manner, just assessing it, recognizing it, nurturing it, right? To help elevate this person's consciousness. Does this make sense? Experiencing 202 and 404 when we are talking about like-mindedness and mutual levels of consciousness, there is nothing more comforting. There is nothing more beautiful. There is nothing more exciting than experiencing that. Especially as a high consciousness being, because it's a lot more rare, right? It's a lot more rare. But with that being said, I want to close by saying this: as an enlightened being, as a high consciousness being, it is your duty, it is my duty to nurture the hearts and nurture the minds of beings that are still needing to learn more to even attain the level of consciousness that we currently hold. If you have high consciousness and you are not being heart-centered, and you aren't doing your best to try and meet people where they're at just to have a heart-centered, joyous conversation with someone, even if you have nothing truly in common on a soul level, it is important that we learn the skill of meeting people where they're at and being heart-centered nonetheless, regardless of where someone's level of consciousness is, especially if it differs from your own. But that is why when you are able to come across these experiences, these 202 experiences, these 404 experiences with like-minded, it makes it easier to be heart-centered, and it makes it easier to meet lower frequency beings where they're at, because you're also able in the back of your mind to comfort yourself with the idea that there are others like me. There are. I'm not alone. I have a tribe out there. I have people that have done the same level of work as I have, that use the same terms, that know the same things, that respect the same things that I expect as far as this human experience goes, who honor the value of inner work, who honor the value of ascension, who honor the value of terms like frequency and vibration. Have a great day.